the higher ground. Come down into Orissa, northern parts of Andhra Pradesh, you could see some showers. I think we may well see some showers into southern parts of Sri Lanka. And I think for the cricket, well, here, that could come into play over the next day or two. Then, but elsewhere, I think Chennai, fine and dry for the game taking place here through the course of Sunday. Come down into South Africa, and of course, all eyes across a good part of southern Africa, particularly into Madagascar, where we have what remains of Tropical Cyclone Benguisa. More flooding rains to come for a good part of Madagascar, and some particularly wet weather once again coming into northern parts and also affecting Mozambique and Tanzania. Heavy showers continue through the Amazon basin, with more flooding rains for southeastern Brazil.
In a new series of one-hour documentaries, AlJazeera English showcases films from across the AlJazeera network.
We are now heading in towards Palestinian waters.
Two small boats set out from Greece to challenge the siege of Gaza. A dangerous act of defiance in the face of injustice.
They're only trying to scare us.
An extraordinary act of solidarity with the Palestinian people.
AlJazeera World at this time.
As the people of Uganda head to the polls, fears of vote rigging, public protests and violence are proving an unwelcome distraction. But after 25 years, will President Museveni retain power? Ugandan elections on Al Jazeera.
Violence spreads in Libya. Witnesses tell of a massacre in Benghazi, blaming many deaths on foreign mercenaries. You're watching Al Jazeera live from Doha. I'm Darine Abu Gaida. Also coming up on the program, triumphant Bahraini protesters back on the streets of the capital after security forces retreat. Dozens wounded as Algerian riot police clash with anti-government protesters. And the world's biggest economies reach a last-minute deal aimed at preventing a repeat of the 2008 financial crisis. Well, an uprising in Libya against the 42-year rule of Muammar Gaddafi appears to be widening. Anti-government protesters have told Al Jazeera of what they call a massacre on Saturday, and that's in the town of Benghazi, with tanks and snipers firing on demonstrators. Most of the violence over the last few days has centered around Libya's second biggest city, but bloody clashes have also taken place in towns across the east. And now we're getting reports of fighting in the western city of Nalut and also in the capital, Tripoli. We'll hear from witnesses inside Libya just a moment. That's after this report from Al Jazeera's Omar Al-Saleh.
Thousands gather near Al-Bayda main mosque in northeastern Libya, a city rocked by days of anti-Gaddafi protests and a scene of death and violent clashes. Chanting, "There is no God but Allah," mourners carry in a coffin a dead protester. And this is what they faced. 50mm caliber bullet cases scattered on this field. Not far away, a security building seems to be set on fire, falling into the hands of angry residents. Some are arming themselves. This man walking away with a helmet and what appears to be an artillery round. In other parts of Al-Bayda, the scene is similar. More chaos and the sound of live fire echoing. Anti-Gaddafi graffiti sprayed on walls and a voice through a loudspeaker saying there is no state here. Reports of casualties running high and constantly rising. The city's hospital seems overwhelmed. In the morgue, the unlucky ones are waiting to be buried, and more are still coming. In Benghazi, this video, which we cannot independently verify, claims to show what protesters believe is an African mercenary hired by the Libyan regime to attack demonstrators. But on Libyan state television, a different picture. No mention of anti-government protests. Instead, supporters of the Libyan leader brought out onto the streets of the capital, Tripoli. Information from Libya is hard to get, with communications and the internet have been disrupted. But what's almost certain, Libya is expecting more unrest in the days to come. Omar Saleh, Al Jazeera.
We can now talk to Omar, who's a resident in Benghazi, and we're not giving his last name because of security concerns in the country. Omar, witnesses that we spoke to on Al Jazeera have reported to us that they were hearing sounds of gunfire. Is that still going on in Benghazi?
Yes, it's still going on, and it's probably in a little bit you will be hearing that as well.
Okay, tell me exactly where you are right now and what you're seeing.
Actually, I'm on the roof of one of the buildings just a few kilometers from downtown. Actually, I don't see anything, but I can hear some gunfire every now and then.
And who do you think is behind this gunfire?
I believe some army holding on one of the bases called Al-Katiba, close to downtown. Not exactly downtown, but it's in the middle of the city.
And are they firing at protesters, at people out on the streets?
Yes. Actually, protesters are who came back from funerals earlier. They collided with them, and once in a while they throw hand-made bombs, and the army is shooting them. And I heard some news that there are a few hundreds probably were killed just this night, but tomorrow will confirm this.
Omar, I know that you're in Benghazi, but I'm just wondering if you've heard about the situation in Al-Baida. Can you confirm any reports that Al-Baida now is not in the hands of the government forces anymore?
From what we hear, it wasn't in the hands of the government until early this night, but I'm not sure if right now. I know that they turn off the lights, the electricity in Al-Baida, but people took control of the city earlier, I think yesterday, and probably today they were still holding on the city today.
Okay, thank you very much for talking to us there from Benghazi, a resident of the city describing to us the situation right now. Meanwhile, Fathi Terbil is a lawyer and an organizer of the protests in Libya, and speaking to Al Jazeera over the internet from Benghazi, he described the situation on the streets. Here's what he said.
رددها المتظاهرون فلعل صعوبة الصوت قد يحول بيننا وبين توصيل كثير من المعلومات ولكن أقول
The audio is muffled because they're not allowing our voices to be heard, so I apologize in advance. What happened today in Benghazi is a massacre against the truth. It is a massacre in the full sense of the word. All kinds of weapons are being used against the civilian population.